Well, hello and welcome back, everyone. Super excited to see all of you again here in the ocean. So I am your host, Charlie, and we have here Tizzle swimming here on the
Hey
right side of her
y'all.
bubble.
Yes.
And I'd love to introduce our guest for today. We have Mel Lutz, right?
Yeah, Melanie Lutz.
Melly Nuts, yes, welcome.
Did you
So
say
we
nuts? I love
no,
it.
I said Lutz, but
All right, Melanie Nuts. I love it. Okay, let's go.
that's some yeah.
Oh my God.
And so we're definitely gonna be able to have a conversation deeply with Melanie about her connection with Birdhouse. She joined us this month with our event, one of our Cosmic Labyrinth episode where we're discovering more about the different guilds and the four elemental guilds. So she joined us when we were talking about Earth Guild. So really excited to have her join us today on our show.
Air
Tizzle,
Guild.
Air Guild,
Air
yes.
Guild.
No,
Yes.
no, no.
Air
Earth
Guild.
Guild. Air Guild is this coming one. You keep switching them off.
Switching it.
I
Switching
Yeah.
take
it.
them both. That's what happens with me. I take them both, and I'll take and on those two.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So,
So good.
did you, Tizzle, did you want to say any kind of words before we get started?
I'm really grateful to be back in this space, to be having, like, being in conversation. And it's so important with everything that's going on that we continue to cultivate these types of communities and just really help the collective learn and hear more about like these great organizations that are like in the work that they're doing, like Birdhouse. And just with the last Cosmic Labbing episode we had, our second one, and just being so deeply like rooted in that earthly element and how everyone was so collaborative, but it was also incredibly healing. And I think people misconstrue the idea of like we talk about grounding and being connected to the earth, and we know that's healing, but how many people don't really practice that and don't really know that it's something that is so important to us and us operating at our highest capacity. So I'm just really excited to be in conversation and um, just informing and helping people align to their highest timeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, without ado, we're gonna go ahead and start with our usual. We'll do an astrology kind of transit. Read the transit for today. Now, today's gonna be a little special because this month is super important. There's actually major transits, everybody. Major
Major.
transits, okay? And the reason why they're major actually is because bigger planets like Pluto doesn't change very often. They're considered generational planets.
Mm-hmm.
And so down here, we see kind of here Pluto in Capricorn, 29 degrees. Pluto usually takes, I forget, 10 to 12, or is it 20? And I think it's like 10 years per sign, right? It's about 10 to 12 years. Usually represents decades. So when we talk about the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, those or the millennials, like a lot of that actually is represented by Pluto. And this is kind of like why we're moving from a Pluto in Capricorn. If you guys know anything about Pluto in Capricorn, Capricorn has more of that, corporations tend to explain this idea of today's version of Capricorn, power and enterprising. So a lot of these big buildings, tall skyscrapers, right? Because it's all about mountains with Capricorn. And so Pluto is kind of like that transformative planet. And so so this is changing from, if you guys look down here, Capricorn here at 29 degrees. And by March 23rd, if you kind of pay attention, it's kind of moving along here. When we hit right there. So about March 23rd is when Pluto goes into Aquarius. So that is going to be a change in energy, a change in vibe, a change in themes in the collective, because this is energy for the whole decade. For the next decade now, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. And now the idea of going from Capricorn to Aquarius, we actually experienced it back in March 2020 when we all got locked down and basically Zoom became our best friend, right? So that was when only one planet, a tiny planet called Mars, went from Capricorn to Aquarius in March of 2020. And then it kind of retrograded back. And so we experienced the beginning of what an Aquarius energy for the collective feels like, which is where everybody went on Zoom. People no longer worked where they lived. Because at this point with Zoom, I can live in Greece and work for people in America.
Yes.
And so that revolutionized the workforce, right? The idea of how we connect through work. And so with Pluto going into Aquarius, like where Mars is a small planet where one industry was changed, which is the communication industry.
Mm-hmm.
When Pluto changes sign to Aquarius, it's going to change every industry will go through this shift. So medicine, we're probably experiencing already a lot of telemedicine today, right? Well, what does that look like when some medicine can be done all remotely?
Right.
Or even scanning your body at home, and maybe like your doctor gets a scanned image of your body. I don't know. This is where innovation happens. This is where inventions happen. So I feel like it's kind of like moving into today. And when Pluto moves into Aquarius, we move into the world of tomorrow. Whatever we think tomorrow is, we're coming up with it very much when the shift happens. So it's very exciting, but I think everyone will experience it as a collective. So jobs and everyday life will change. And that's a really big one.
Is the North Node squaring this? Is that what I'm seeing? The North Node in Taurus.
Right there.
So yeah, it's the North Node is gonna it's in Taurus, right? In addition, it's at a 4th degree, which is really reminding us like how are we taking care of Mama Earth? And I'm saying Mama Earth because it's the 4th degree and it's in Taurus, which is all about Earth. So it's like we need to get it together. And then it's in the 9th house as well. So what are we doing to really teach and communicate and let other people know things that we should be doing and can be doing to help heal the earth? So important. And because if we're not working to heal the earth, right, if we're not helping to heal that wound or that energy and to like shift it into this new way of being, the suffering which we've already been dealing with all the crazy crashes and leaks and spills and that have been going on. So Pluto is really calling on us collectively to get our acts together regarding taking care of the earth, because when we can heal the earth, we can heal ourselves, because the oneness, it's real, it's super there. And then Saturn and Pisces, y'all. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So let's look at the Saturn and Pisces back here. So we'll rewind because it's at 1 degrees here. And if you'll see, we want to basically see, and this is Saturn, everyone, Saturn over here. So we're looking at that. It's now at 0 degrees. And so right there on, oh, yes, March 6th, we are today, yesterday actually was Saturn's last day in Aquarius, and now moving into Pisces. So Saturn is where our foundation lies, a lot of our kind of like structure. So you could say civilization is an idea of structure, right?
Yeah.
Classes is an idea of structure. So Saturn allows us to create structure so we can build stuff, right? And so for it to move into Pisces, where it was Saturn was in Aquarius, we were going back to this idea of like we're getting a lot of innovation. So foundation, our foundation was actually getting renovated, right? So this is where we saw during COVID, we had to change the way we dealt, even with business. People had to change the way they were doing business. So very much that Saturn was already in Aquarius and changed. This time, it's almost like we have to think about more of how is everybody valued in our community so that the structure supports that, right? And I think we're dealing with it right now where a lot of what we say groups that have been previously marginalized is getting a lot of voice. But the problem now, it's creating laws that don't need to be created for those who may not be the majority, right? And this is where I think we're taking this Saturn too far. And like, I think Pisces comes in and say, we just need like simple rules to let everybody live. I mean, this
Yes.
idea that you make certain rules for certain people is actually why we don't even understand rules, right? So, I feel like this kind of Pisces Saturn energy is like, make your dreams come true, but make sure it's realistic. Because,
Yes.
we all appreciate grand dreams, but if there's dreams that aren't possible, let's at least make the ones that are possible and let's structure them down so that we appreciate people's, we value people more. And that's kind of that Pisces energy to me.
Very. And it's in the seventh house. So it's like, how are you doing this and doing like being in right relationship with the people that you're working with, because it's about partnerships. It's about like, again, community, but in a different way. Like in your personal relationships, what are you doing to actualize your dreams, but fulfill your dreams in a way that's gonna like not only benefit yourself and what you've been trying to work towards, but then ultimately serve the collective. So it's having that fine balance, having that fine balance. Mm,
Yeah. So
yeah.
overall, there's a lot of changes in our Pluto, Saturn are pretty major movements for the collective. So, and I think it's very positive because we're having this conversation right about education. That's an
Mhm.
institution that is going through changes, and today we can have this deeper conversation about what that looks like. Because I feel like Mel, you fit in perfectly with this theme. So we'll definitely talk a little bit more about that. But I think in general, it's telling us the water sign of Pisces. With also, if you see, we're in the ocean today in our set. But this idea of everything's in Pisces, right? There's a lot of Piscean energy. You see these 4 planets here. So right now we're in a stage of like allowing our dreams to come in. So we can be a little bit more dreamy this month. Allow
Yeah.
ourselves to think about things that are better, things that are more interesting outside of like what could be really tough in our everyday life. Uh,
Yeah,
you know,
and I want to just encourage all of my healers, the folks that are into esoteric astrology, um, witchcraft, all that other stuff. Yo, Mercury's in Pisces. Okay, the way you're communicating, the way you're thinking, the way you're like creating songs, like really tap into that energy and understand that this is a very, very powerful time to root and steep yourself more into the spiritual as opposed to like the three-dimensional. Like get into that meditative space and really allow yourself to like tap into that spiritual aspect and that spiritual part of yourself. It's our time, y'all. It's our time. Woo!
yes. Happy solar return, Tizzle. This is going to be her solar
Yeah.
return this month. Yeah.
Big 4-0.
Oh,
Big
Woo!
wow.
4-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
That's
so
big.
excited. Thanks,
Jeez.
y'all. I'm grateful. I
Yes.
made it.
For
40
many
years around the
decades.
sun.
Yes.
So cool. Thank you for this,
Mel, would
Charlie.
you like to add anything to what you saw? If you know anything about astrology or just wanted to share some things that you felt?
I mean, I just keep getting the alignment, and obviously with your depth of knowledge and bringing the wheel out to really create this union of sorts. It looks like alignment. I mean, I just keep seeing the degrees where we're at with our foundational work, the synchronicities. I know that's Jungian kind of thing, but we're into this alignment. And when we allow ourselves to just be held in this movement, that you just took us through the month on the wheel, the center point obviously never changes, which is who and what we're here to beam as light. So I just was kind of centering on that, the center of the wheel, if you will, and then allowing just, wow, there's a flow of goodness that's going to take place between this transit. We have a celebratory scenario for Tizzle, which is going to be like, pretty light filled and magnificent. 40, 40, I know she mentioned it. I hope, 40 is,
Yes.
that is a biblical number. That is one of the numerology, of the journey's completion, if you will. So I'm
Mhm.
proud that
Mhm.
that's in this moment. And I will say this, it has been a bumpy winter of
Yeah.
much churning, and as she mentioned, we've had just a number of just off the rails things. And so it's all kind of moving towards this, I think, deeper alignment and just celebration of spring. So I'm pretty pumped.
Yes, yes,
Pumped.
yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Mel.
Back
Yes.
under the sea, everyone.
Yes. So
And I think
back to Pisces season and us hanging out under the ocean.
and we're gonna get, I'm sorry to like do a Disney thing, but we're gonna have our little mermaids coming strong. So one of my favorite musicals is Once on This Island, which was the original story of The Little Mermaid translated in the Caribbean. So it is truly Mama Will Provide is the #1 song that ends the show in that first. So Mama Will Provide. So I'll take
Yes.
the sea.
Oh, the
Under the
synchronicity.
Sea is different than Once on This Island. I mean, that's from The Little Mermaid, but I encourage folks to check out Once on This Island, listen to some of that magic.
Ah, thank you
Once
for
on this
that.
island, yes.
Mermaid magic.
So let us start the show today. We love to actually get to know Melanie a little bit further. So would you like to kind of give us a little bit background of what got you here? What made you want to kind of, experience Cosmic Labyrinth and why you joined our experience? And yeah.
Well, the labyrinth has drawn me in. I'm a spiral person. Obviously, the DNA of the cellular, system that we grow from is spiral based. So the labyrinth is just popped, as a wholeness symbol, as a healing symbol. And as a writer, someone who works in storytelling, encompassing the mythology of the universe is always the archetypal work. So you're seeing things, in this. I mean, at this point, we have 8 billion humans, um, countless destruction from the humanity of our equals, people, planet, animal, and all the things that live under the sea as well as above the sea. So we haven't done a great job in different ways with the mass numbers, but the idea of astrology, the idea of the labyrinth brings us back to I can handle the entire consciousness within my limited, perception that I'm able to experience. And the labyrinth gives me more bandwidth. So it's like a broadcast symbol. And then when I heard Cosmic Labyrinth, I was like, oh, we're going multidimensional. We're entering the realms. We're like, by locating in some ways, we're entering the game builder world of the labyrinth. That creates the cosmology of our existence, which again, you just shared with us your gifts as I guess both of you are astrologers as well as mystics, as well as, so you'll give me yes. So yeah, so those are the stories of the universe so deeply embedded that, we're moving to them, even if we can't name the tune. I guess that's an old Japanese myth that, comes out of
Yeah.
the stories we share.
Beautiful.
So that's it, writer and lover of the earth.
Nice, awesome. So currently,
That's beautiful.
yes,
Thank you.
Tizzle, are you okay? You're kind of frozen over there. Just let you know. Oh, there you go.
No, I'm here. Y'all froze on me. How funny.
Yes, please. There was a glitch in the matrix.
Truth.
Thank you, Melanie. So yeah, tell us more about the birdhouse. Actually, that's a very great story about, because the birdhouse, we try to do a couple events. Yeah, we haven't fully gotten a chance to do it yet because we had some logistic issues, but the birdhouse was one of the first 2 places that we looked at when we were doing some of our events.
Oh wow, that's when to kind of collaborate and do some healing work with and enter the garden and really.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and eventually we love to. I mean, it's basically, we're kind of creating networks of field trip locations, right? And so this is kind of like a great place for like a modern day field trip where you're learning and being very interactive with, I guess that this, you know, the birdhouse. So
Yeah,
we'll
I
more about
I
that.
mean, I'll just give you a little. I have an organization that's kind of rooted in love, and like I said, my three things are seeding. We're always planting seeds. To teach is to demonstrate. So the demonstration of how abundant and, you know, seed producing, not only our thoughts are, our plants, animals, people, we're just an abundant universe. So seeding was you know, it's just something you're raised with if you grew up on a farm, which I did. We're Sicilian, so we're kind of you know, tough island people that just used everything, you know, everything that was available to bring health, wellness, and prosperity to the village, if you will, to the community. So that would include, you know, picking linden leaves from the tree and you know, making sure grandma, you know, grandma was like, oh, you all will have a beautiful sleep tonight because the calming nature of this tea that we're picking leaves, you know, from the tree will bring you beautiful, beautiful dreams. So, you know, those are the history of grandmas and bringing in the connection to the land, the tree. Oh, there's a leaf on the tree that's going to nourish and support my sleep. Wow, that's awesome. So that was kind of the baby, you know, the baby Mel stuff. And then as soon as I could, you know, the gardening, the land, the soil was something that I just needed to connect to tell stories, to be a part of the Hollywood community meant finding real, tangible spaces that meant the earth, that meant community garden, that meant storytelling, sacred circle. And so it just was my way of really being grounded because the realms of storytelling, you know, we're creating realities together, you know. So that was the most helpful tool for me to connect and not fly off and you know, enter other spaces that didn't feel as healing or balanced or nourished. And then I obviously have an all systems love movement that led me to the birdhouse. We practice biophilia within our community here, which is the love of all living things. So it is our connection that we, you know, again, our two template pieces that we've discovered as we've listened to the garden, as we've sung to the garden, as we've tended the garden, as we've cultivated the earth, as we've thought about the soil, as we've done like root, you know, real deep rooting work. Um we heard that you know, the cycle and that, again, that love of our connection is how we, you know, are going to grow and communicate, you know. And then it was like mycelium, and then we you know, it's like you start becoming like a soil scientist and you're like, oh wow. And it just, the earth like tells you and it invites you into like what you're ready for sometimes. And the more that you participate, the more you grow, the more that you learn about seeds and, you know, cultivating the conditions for them to thrive, you know, the more you're really, you know, in your abundance and in your harmonies and in your storytelling powers. And, you know, I am that I see. And it just became like really the, you know, that love of all living things. Like we are a part of all that is. And so we started reimagining ways to tell stories, to invite people into a conversation, to intersect and explore like what would be possible. So it's like every day I do the work in my writing and in my connection, synchronicity, you know, of just considering the possibility, you know, I can be free of what happened yesterday and imagine a presence, you know, and connect to that. And who knows what tomorrow will bring. But the garden allows you to be present. And
Mel, oh, this is so beautiful. I thank you for sharing this. I didn't mean to cut you off at all. Please finish if you were going to say something.
No, and I just wanted to shout out a couple of other sister organizations. A through line for me has been dance and musical theater, obviously. So I do love to sing. I love to dance, even though I'm obviously the best compliment I've gotten for my dancing performances is that I saw a lot of joy out there. So it's never like grace or anything, but the joy factor in dance movement has been like a through line. So there is an organization that I've been working with for like 10, 12 years that really did lead me to the Biophilia, which is dance. It was a practice called Dance from the Heart, created by a group called the Critical Mass Dance Company. And that led me to the flow and the energy and the under the sea waters, and listening not only to what is, going beyond the words and the vibrations of, how we're connected to our waters, the earth's waters, and then this flow that just like takes over and brings us to the center of our joy. And then that led me to wanting to make connections of food desert, from the south and north, east and west. Like, how are we seeing so much like fruit, avocados and stuff that aren't connecting to anyone else, are falling, the squirrels, our buddies that are eating them, but like they're not actually being distributed. So there is an organization called the Hollywood Orchard that I started picking fruits from. People's would go onto a website and put their fruit trees on there, and they're like, oh, we're looking good, we got about 3 boxes of oranges, like come on by and pick them. And then we would distribute those to people downtown. And that's the beginning of the Hollywood Orchard. The orchard splintered and then seeded the birdhouse, and then the birdhouse specifically in Beechwood, in this vortex that's here in Beechwood Canyon under the Hollywood Stein, we started broadcasting this garden land restoration. How do we regenerate these stories that are so old, and really begin to broadcast 21st century, earth stories, eco stories. And that's how we began the birdhouse. And the flagship program was something called Band of Singers, led by Mesa Pullman, who is a beautiful folk artist, writer, producer, different things that she does, and grew up in the canyon. And she just decided that we were gonna really sing Biophilia. And we gathered around the orange tree at the garden, at the birdhouse garden. And then all of a sudden we were like, oh, we have new stories to tell. Oh, we don't have to focus on, I learned a lot from my movement practice and the work that led me, and all of the teachers and all of the people that have shared stuff. But, there's a point in your life, and sometimes you hit it early, sometimes much later, where you start wanting to show up, not talk about it, but be about what you're for. I'm for a loving world. I'm asking the question, what if all of our thoughts were loving? Because on some level, I cannot understand why the world isn't just loving. And so those are the pieces of, like, for me, I just have a couple mantras, which are like, if anything you're saying isn't with love, it isn't true. And so that's how I kind of pull the plug on people who, it's a dramatic town, that's a lot of light here in California, and folks do love a good dramatic, reading of their lives. So it's been really powerful to be in the entertainment business, to really for 12 years disconnect from old stories. And gosh, it's just a pleasure to find like minds. The Cosmic Labyrinth obviously is a developing form of what I consider to be a possible bridge for, the young people I work with, my nephew, my nieces, my gamers, my like folks that are already involved in an empathetic world online, if you will, that have taken they've already advanced. Older people like myself have accelerated that over COVID. But my youngins or whatever who are coming through, who are learning about the garden, who are learning about how to make tea, how to connect and cook, how to do this, how to take the earth and actually put nutrients back into it, and not just
Mm,
it just is magic that it just keeps serving us. But no, that's actually not. And so people like already know that. And it's just been powerful and beautiful to participate. The birdhouse has been so supportive of ideas, story, and and ways that we can amplify like folks' messages and stuff. So I'm trying to expand out a little bit, and that's why I've used my own spiral to kind of hit different land trusts and different healing gardens, as we spiral across the Pacific and extend out into the Pacific Ocean and hit our Malaysian neighbors and things like that. So I'm just trying to work my way into my own cosmic healing garden spiral.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
So phenomenal. I am so inspired. And as you were talking, the first time I ever heard the word biophilia was from like a Bjork album, right?
Oh, wow.
And that album is so ethereal. It's so like you're hanging out with the fungi type of vibe, right? And
Yeah.
as soon as you said the word, it made me think like, how has biophilia shifted the way you interact with humans? Because I mean, it's really challenging to like be mad at an animal or a butterfly or bug, but like as humans, we do some stuff that is, charged and jarring and shameful and hurtful. But to operate in a space of biophilia where you're like, I love you anyway. And I say this because, I'm an educator and I share with students, there's a gentleman named Christopher Conti who works in prisons, and he works with people who have done heinous crimes, but he loves them anyway. And so many people can't make that connection. And so I'm like, whoa, Mel, how has this idea and this kind of mantra in a way of biophilia, how has this changed the way you interact day to day with folks?
Well, I've had, like I said, I can't, the journey has long, the idea of the dark forces and dark terra and the energies of war and the ways like you in the astrological world, see the conflicts, as you just, you can spin it a little bit and you'll get some conflicting energies there from the planetary constellations. So I just repeat some things that have been shared with me, but I was lucky to do a lot of very radical work early on in my storytelling that allowed for what we all call shadow work to emerge. And it really made sense to me finally that this is the connection with the dark clay, the earth. This is how the earth works. It's like, I know it was part of our conversation, but the earth is our mother.
Yes.
It births continuously. The earth magic that I experience just in my kitchen, is like, I'm like, how does this like all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, I got some mold. Oh no, I'm regrowing this thing. Oh my God, this flower just completely burst open. I thought it was a dead stick. Like, what's going on? There's like magic, like everywhere. So
Right.
that was the, I've also done some the documentary that I've been working on for probably like 7 years. That's a series, so it's kind of evolved my thinking. But I did interview activists who are in the darker elements of our dehumanizing of folks. And I asked that question, what if all of our thoughts were loving? I received some answers, and I began to just hear the unifying force. And obviously you've the episode that I saw of your show that's just kind of birthing itself, it is a love movement. Like there is just deep love that lives in this darkness that isn't, things are not as they should be, whatever that is. So it was just this way of working with the earth, composting the nutrients. I mean, even now there's that, my brother mentioned to me, I was writing something, and he was like, yeah, it's like that new Star Trek series. The mycelium is faster than the speed of light or whatever. And I was like, I haven't seen that. But the communication network of once you get into the mycelium of the darkness, like who knows what's going on down there. And then it's, and then writers are like, oh, let's use that as faster communiques than the speed of light. So I was just like, so you continually get feedback from people that the magic is in the darkness. And those who may have, like one of the gentlemen, I mean, they had murdered someone when they were a teenager and were in prison for 35 years. And you interview, this is an act, like a love activist saying, I am not who I was when I was 12 years old. This is my poetry. This is my work. These are the stories I'm trying to amplify. It doesn't matter that I'm in a cage, and then you just go, yeah, man, how do we get out of the cage or whatever? And then you start to just cultivate the conditions that maybe there is just he's released. And then time has healed or brought us more wisdom from that darker element. So I don't know, you just kind of keep inquiring. And
that
I do
is,
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
I've been trying to like, I'm in meetings all the time pitching things, and I've been trying to say this word in these meetings, and I always stutter. I'm going to try it again, but it's that rematriating. Like that is what I in our conversations, water breaks, but that's the stuff. I mean, women, the whatever this, feminine, energy that is, we've produced 100% of this population. So I just, it comes from.
It's really beautiful you talk about, the darkness that way too, because as a game producer, like some of my greatest experience, and I wanted to know more about, like, how has this personal experience changed your writing? Because for me as a game producer, like when I was a player, you have a perspective of the game. When you start creating your own game, right, it changes different perspective. Once you start to know darkness, that's when the story goes very differently, right? So what I really appreciate is this idea that technically most stories start because the darkness shows up, right? So if anything, it initiates the hero's journey, right? And so the greatest good guys are always pitted against the greatest bad guys. Otherwise, you don't have a very strong character that goes through this kind of change. So it's really funny because even in like what we're doing, in our own game, right? Like the idea of shadow writers, right? Is now that we have these, really awesome like bad guys, I noticed more people were more involved in like wanting to, how do we deal with the shadow writer, right? Versus it was just like, oh, it's personal development. Like, yeah, I'm personally developed. That's fine. But if you say that we got shadows to deal with, you're like, oh, okay, let's, work together, right? And so this idea, what we're doing with the Cosmic Labyrinth is that I think a lot of us who are healers, a lot of us who, say have done the work, we realize that, we're isolated and we've dealt with our shadow work. So now we're integrated, but it's almost kind of like you feel lonely because you've integrated shadow. So you're not fighting with yourself anymore. And so what, really what happens is that love happens, because even your own shadow, if you love, that means you'll love the shadow in the world, right? And that's kind of where, ironically, if we were to use psychology, pure psychology, what you learn even in astrology, to what we see in the world, where it's the time when there's no love that we create violence, yet we isolate it as if we don't know the solution to it. And so we never actually add love to a situation that has no love in it. Right. So going back to like violent crimes, right? Usually is when we isolate people. Yet, in jail, do you guys know like what's the worst thing you can do to people in jail? You send them to isolation, right? You send them to, right? Yet
the whole.
Right, the whole. What happened to us culturally on the planet when we were told you can't leave your house? We were all sent to isolation.
Yeah.
Right. It's not called isolation. It's called, like in movies, they always say like send him over to
Yeah. And that's what the birdhouse, I don't mean to interrupt, but this idea of like disconnection is where the shame and the anger and I am, nothing is held. And then we have these reactions that are disproportionate to the circumstance. And that occurs, throughout Los Angeles, and you travel, across the world. It's like these disproportionate responses because there's a disconnection. And the biophilia story telling is about connection and taking the harm out of harmony, which was brought up on our Sunday session at the Cosmic Lab. There's definitely, I worked as an executive at one of the major networks, and the idea of kind of storytelling from a new paradigm really was born for me. And that included removing the lens from one particular point of view. So if you look at the 20th century, there's just a different story that people expressed that had to be seen in a particular way, that had to be successful in a particular way, that needed the box office, needed the capitalism, needed the eyeballs, and those types of things. And that was what the 20th century represented for the entertainment business, kind of the exhibition at its lowest, highest form. And those of us who are doing the eco storytelling, that are doing the restorative, regenerative, healing stories that actually broadcast messages that are not disproportionate to disconnection, but about the embracing of connection. And so my work of the 21st century has been engaging the storytelling that has the harmony, that is from the earth, that has the sacred ritual that allows us to express what actually the orange grove is expressing as a measure of storytelling. And so I got, and I didn't realize you were a game producer, but I have not worked in game stuff because I don't know how to engage. I have not known how to engage with it. But with the Cosmic Labyrinth, I did begin to experience when, he's like, oh, here's the link to the Cosmic Labyrinth. And I was like, oh, that's like me playing with my nephew. And I'm like, I'm not really playing with my nephew. He just wants me to watch him play and spend time with him. So we're connected. But we're connected because he's got work to do, which is his game life. And he's world building and he's fighting with his buddies and they're killing people. So I was like, gosh, should we engage him in the garden? Should we figure out different ways? But I did see that there's a storytelling game world coming in from this point of view that I've actually been developing, incubating. And so I did see that pop when we did our cosmic labbing. Because
Wow.
that eco story, when your world, like if you can connect those experiential connections about, oh, this is the earth, and then I am a part of, oh, this is the sea, I'm a part of that sea, I move like the sea, then we're really telling new stories, and we're embracing the empathy, the neurodivergency, the
Mhm.
expanded consciousness that is just like popping, pop, 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 pop all over the place. So
Yep.
those are the things I'm feeding, nourishing, trying to connect in different ways. So that's part of what biophilia has meant as a storytelling, um, aspect. And I don't want to get too much into like brand, there's always a brand conversation, or, how can we align in and people adopt language. This is the work of a shifted point of perception, that
Yep.
I am connected to the earth, and the earth has stories to birth. And so that's the
Just
work.
we gotta listen to her. We gotta listen to her. Slow
But
down to listen.
anyway, that's the biophilia storytelling of the imagined what happened to this world of like, what happened? Like, how do we get like not loving? Like, I don't get it. Like, how did we
Mhm.
disassociate? I mean, I've been using that word with this conversation. I've never used it before, but we have our elders separated from us. We've
Yes.
got single families. Like, that's the thing about the Beechwood, the birdhouse, this weird spiritual landscape where, we had this eco, like, Basant lodges here, those practices that are just like deep esoteric practices, like, are part of the history. We've got the Dominican nuns, the angel, like, where they live silently and pray all the time just on the corner. And then, so we've got like a very weird spiritual, like, vortex that has canyonized over here.
Yes. Oh,
So
so
anyway,
rich.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
full of information. I love it.
Yes, I know, I know. Thank you for saying that. I mean, I being able to kind of merge, like I really had a board game. I went from the VR world where I was making a game, and just like you, like I chose to make loving games, or at least like games that were supporting souls, right? And so the idea is I just make an astrology game, but I did not want to make a what I call kill first and never ask questions, right? Because it's like, when are you gonna ask the questions if they're good or not? Like people just, create this habit that the first thing you see, you shoot. And I'm like, wait a minute, like we're kind of hacking something here in these kids' brains. And so I chose to create, this astrology game, but I just like you being a Leo, like my Leo rising, Leo moon, I'm like, what's the story? I'm not playing a game just to play a game. So, it was really fun to kind of like turn our world into the MMO that it already is. I would just, had to make a story that was basically getting us to tell our own story. And that would naturally, basically like the world is already filled with people who are living awesome stories. That means people are writing our own story, right? So how do we like materialize that into a game that then, because a lot of things that we're dealing
Yeah,
with is community problems, right? So,
yeah, and we've got the bottom up governance, and there's the gaming world actually supports that in a different that it hasn't been exercised. And I don't know, I know that there's a couple things that are going on, like Microsoft's acquiring Blizzard and Activision.
oh my
they've been
goodness.
there,
No,
What?
no,
they've been
no.
a year and a
What
half.
a reflexies.
It
This
may
is
or may
where
not.
games go to die, like Disney and their IPs.
Isn't that the same thing that
Yeah,
happened to D&D? Right?
I
Didn't
mean,
something like that happen with D&D?
I hope not. So this is where like
but
opportunities for
there's like yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There's this extraction of IP. I mean, so it's like there's large suctions of of IP kind of like getting
It's the eat or be eaten game, right? So you get bigger by eating
Pac-Man, yeah.
others. Yeah, and so these
and
corporations,
fundings of the billion, like I got this billion, so let me just see where I can acquire.
yeah, they basically skip the R&D process and then they put their agenda on top of, you know, the structure that someone already built, right?
Yeah, and I do want to go back to the astrology, which I believe is the which I didn't know, but is the anchor for the cosmic labyrinth and also the show, you know. And we're in a found. I just wanted to recap as we move to, you know, I don't know how long we've been on, but we're gonna hit
Yeah.
the hour mark. So I just wanted to move back to that foundational time that both of you kind of addressed when you were like looking at the circle. So we're in a foundational, you know, moment to really consider what is my foundation and am I standing on my, you know, on
Strong.
I don't, yeah, are my roots, you know, are the sugars that were pushed down into my roots to start winter, like are they, am I feeling them coming back?
Right.
You know, or do they need some extra like oat straw? Like what do they need?
Oh, straw, yes.
Let's get the oat straw flowing in there. Let's get some like where am I, like, you know, where am I, you know, connecting to my earth elements? What do I need? What do my roots need? And really embrace that, because, you know, I started kind of in self-love because I hated myself so much kid that I was like, there was really like there was nowhere to go other than to just be like, I flipped around and I was like, oh, I'm a loving kid. Like that's like I'm just a loving kid. Like it just flipped itself. And so
Yes.
for me, the beauty of what we mean with this biophilia, with the birdhouse being like a bit of an incubator for the Mel's Lovelet situation, you know, is that we're here to share like our fruiting. We're here when we harvest, share our gifts, to be a wisdom conduit, the mycelium of our past, and just be present to why, you know, what we're here to share, and take the burden off of ourselves to do or be anything else. And that's just a connective. I got my roots. I mean, some sun, maybe, you know, I get some extra rest in the moon, full moon time, and then, gosh, who knows what's gonna pop? Boom. So it's like a
It's
really,
the time.
yeah, this is time.
Definitely
It's a
time.
really good time.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Damn,
Spring.
Mel, you're legit. Like, I'm so
We're
lit
under the
from this
sea. How
conversation.
can I not be? We're under the sea.
Dude,
It's
as
awesome.
above, so below. As above, so below, for
Yes,
sure.
yes.
So if there's anything I can do, obviously, to contribute to
Your presence.
any of the
Your
gifts,
presence.
you know, I'm definitely excited about the cosmic labyrinth, the ways that it's going to like grow and infuse like so much joy and wisdom, you know, into those who interact with the tank or the, you know, however you're describing this next phase for yourselves. And just like may the growth accelerate in ways that you can't even imagine. And just may the ease and rest that comes from what you've shared just like flow naturally and beautifully over all of your energies. You know,
Yeah, thank
job.
you.
Receive. Receive. Mel,
Yeah.
I have a vision, and we're working on getting our classes out there to the collective, so where we'll, like, for example, I'm doing things like related to arts and healing, and like we all have our little like pockets. Charlie's going to be teaching folks about like the power of like herbs and like acupressure points, and like just listening to you, I was like, is there a class that exists on biophilia? Right? Do people even know about this? Like, yes, it's a Bjork album, but like she has like
That's a
Moon
long
and like
time ago.
all these. No, but it's such a good fucking album. Like,
I mean, I
seriously.
can't believe you
But
brought, I definitely got the chills because I had a momentary European Bjork moment where but I haven't really reconnected to that. So that's like,
oh no, I am a Portishead, like Radiohead, like that's my
jam.
Tricky, Massive Attack, that's my jam, right? So I'm thinking right now, and I'm just planting the seed because, the moon is like, I feel like a little moon right now in my bubble, right? The under the sea moon.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I just illuminating this idea of, if I just love to invite you to share more about for you to share more about your experience with biophilia, and how
Yeah.
if people were to embody this concept and really like use it, and like think of everything as love and loving everything. I mean, whew, I get chills thinking about it, and I'm really excited about having that be an element or a part of the cosmic labyrinth, because it truly embodies what we're doing and how we desire to connect with the collective. And I'm so honored and just grateful to like listen to you and like absorb all of this powerful information, like this osmosis that's happening. Yes, we're like Osmosis
Definitely
Jones right now. I love it.
Osmosis Jones. And then, yeah, I was picturing the heart, obviously, in the center of the labyrinth for sure when you were talking.
So
Yeah,
good.
there's always the heart in the middle, the collective heart. And obviously, once we go back to Once on This Island, there's a great song in there that's that year is like all about the biophilia. So I think we're really
We
under
could
the
do fun reels with that soundtrack, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean I'm excited for the new version, the live action version. I think it'll be fun of the Little Mermaid. But this Once on the Island is like my all-time favorite. I think the people also wrote Ragtime, which has a concert coming out, like a fundraiser for the Entertainment Community Fund is coming up. So people can donate to help the actors, dancers, and folks that really, but yeah, it's all good.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I love to actually get, I mean, because you are a writer, I'd love for you to get some feedback actually on the full story if I actually show you some of the major plot lines to what we're doing, because it's like multiple series.
I just feel
yeah.
like, and I don't know, like I don't know that world that much. I do have yes, obviously I'm saying yes to that. But I see that you could be like plugged into, these are larger organizations and things like that, but those are the stories that we should be selling, not, selling funding slash, selling slash funding.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So those connections back to using the eco storytelling, using the wholeness and the astrology elements, but I do feel like there's a path. I know I've been carving, I mean, it's 12 years and the audience, people have to point to an audience still in this world, but there's many artists who are saying, that's not true. That is not true. Capitalism, a story is like we heal through the stories that we share and tell. That is the tradition of storytelling. It is a healing medium. It has nothing to do with exhibition and like ticket prices.
Right.
I am just hearkening back to a real truth of when we couldn't speak, we beat the drums, to tell our stories. And those were ways that we connected and healed and knew that we were a part of all that is. So I just am advocating for that. I will support, send me whatever you want, but if there's any way that I can connect, you into something that would help uplift that or manifest that, I would be really honored.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, the idea of Labyrinth too is we're reinventing everything, right? So I mean, that's where Indy and I do really well, because like we're like, hey, well, let's try this. Yeah, but let's reinvent it. So we're at the stage now where we're reinventing just what this platform is. Is there's a new way of storytelling, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. Is we're merging a few things. It's got to choose your own adventure. On top of like, it's actually a school curriculum. On top of that, it's like is going to have we want some books to come through where everyone can actually write to the world, because we're building a world. So it's a franchise that then because we want it to be user generated so that you as a person can say, like the idea of being able to write cool Jedi characters, you kind of got to go through an entire patent system, like ILM
I
or
just want to say
data.
that when I clicked on the link and why I showed up for our Sunday cosmic labbing, you nailed it already. The simplicity of your share is already there. There's a wholeness pattern which you repeat every day because the labyrinth is exactly your program. It is 100% your program. So those two overlap. And then, like I said, I saw me sitting with my nephew when I clicked on the screen. That was like, oh, there's a tree or something. There's the water. I mean, whatever it was, earth, tree, earth, air, whatever you had, because it just flashed for a second.
Yeah.
But that's like you've arrived. So truly, it is like the invitation for funding is what I'm and how does that exist in a world that's continuing, how can you just disconnect yourself and plug yourself into a biophiliac story?
Yes.
That,
Yes. Yes.
that's all I'm saying. So the rest of it's like consumerism and you need funding to do projects, but there's just so much money in the world to create things. So
Yeah.
What
but
a
anyway,
this
yeah,
show.
we did
Yes.
it.
Yes, yes. You know what's
Yes.
interesting? I was just thinking biophilia could be like the idea of the solution to VR, right? Because what's happening, one of the major problems we have in VR is actually the body's input, the full physical input of the body, where right now we just have hands and joysticks, right? So, and now what we know about what the body can do, like VR is going to take a few years to develop a suit that gives you all the abilities of the input of the body, right? Yet I'm like, why don't we use our body to play this game, right? And so biophilia could be the idea of like how you like a tutorials how to use your body in this world using biophilia. So once you know how to use your body, you play the game, right? And that allows you to say, I didn't know I had these inputs. I'm like, yeah, because somebody told you only have 5 senses.
Right. Yeah.
No,
Like
biophilia says it's 100 senses.
yeah, and the work of biophilia like decodes the things folks have told you that is not true. That's like so I have the All Systems Love production process, which I've been working for 10 years to do to infuse that love in the creative process. So I do believe we're on to something wonderful.
Yes.
So I love you guys.
So would you like to leave the audience with any way they can reach you so that, if they love what you're doing, stay in contact with you?
It's Mel's Loveland across the board. So you can Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and websites. It's all Mel's Loveland. So yeah, I'm easy to get in touch with and easy to expand on and express the love.
Got it. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mel.
Yes, thank you, Mel,
Thank
for
you,
joining
Charlie.
us. Thank you,
Thank you.
Tizzle.
Love y'all.
Yes, it
Thank
was
you
great
so
to see all of
much.
you under the ocean today. All right, everybody, you have a great one. Till next time.
Bye. Take